Famous face, familiar story, right? Not quite. Beneath the fame are the untold details, the strange facts, the moments you never saw coming. It's time to look a little closer, sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unexpected.
Michael Jackson's ownership of the rights to most of the Beatles' music is a fascinating and somewhat controversial chapter in music history that began in the mid-1980s. Jackson, already a global superstar following the success of albums like Thriller, developed a friendship with Paul McCartney during the early 1980s, while collaborating on songs such as The Girl Is Mine and Say Say Say. During these collaborations, McCartney shared insights into the music business, specifically the financial benefits of owning publishing rights to songs. He explained how owning a song's publishing rights meant earning royalties every time the song was played or used commercially, a lesson McCartney had learned after losing control of his own Beatles catalogue years earlier. Inspired by this advice, Jackson began acquiring publishing rights to various songs, starting with smaller catalogues from artists like Sly and the Family Stone, before setting his sights on a much larger prize. In 1985, the publishing company ATV Music, which owned the rights to around 4,000 songs, including 251 Beatles tracks primarily written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, went up for sale. The Beatles' catalogue had been under ATV's control since 1969, when the band's original publishing company, Northern Songs, was acquired by the British company Associated Television in a deal that left Lennon and McCartney without ownership of their own songs. When ATV decided to sell its catalogue, McCartney expressed interest in buying it back, but found the asking price too high. Jackson, however, saw an opportunity to secure a valuable asset. After months of negotiations, he purchased ATV Music for $47.5 million on August 14, 1985, outbidding McCartney and others. This acquisition gave Jackson control over iconic Beatles songs like Hey Jude, Yesterday and Let It Be, making him one of the most powerful figures in music publishing at the time. The purchase strained Jackson's relationship with McCartney, who felt betrayed by the move. McCartney had shared the business advice in good faith, not expecting Jackson to use it to acquire the very songs McCartney had hoped to reclaim. The two reportedly drifted apart, with McCartney later describing the act as dodgy, feeling that Jackson had essentially pulled the rug out from under him. For Jackson, however, the purchase was a shrewd business decision. The Beatles' catalogue proved to be a financial lifeline, generating significant royalties and serving as collateral for loans during periods of financial difficulty in his later years. In 1995, facing mounting debts, Jackson sold 50% of ATV to Sony for $95 million, forming the joint venture Sony ATV Music Publishing. This partnership expanded the company's holdings to include songs by other major artists, but Jackson retained a significant stake in the Beatles' catalogue. Jackson held on to his share of the Beatles' catalogue until 2008, when financial pressures forced him to relinquish his remaining interest to Sony, one of his primary creditors. After his death in 2009, his estate continued to manage his share until 2016, when Sony bought out the estate's 50% stake in Sony ATV for $750 million, giving Sony full control of the Beatles' catalogue. Meanwhile, McCartney pursued legal action to reclaim his share of the publishing rights, leveraging US copyright law that allows songwriters to recapture their rights after a certain period. In 2017, he reached a confidential settlement with Sony ATV, regaining some control over the songs he had co-written. Jackson's ownership of the Beatles' music for over 2 decades not only highlighted his business acumen, but also underscored the complex dynamics of friendship, betrayal, and the high stakes of the music industry.
Pablo Picasso, one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, was not alive when the first iPhone was released, as he passed away well before that technological milestone. Picasso died on April 8, 1973, at the age of 91 in Mougins, France, after a prolific career that revolutionized modern art through movements like Cubism, Surrealism, and his earlier Blue and Rose periods. Known for masterpieces such as Guernica and Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, he left an indelible mark on the art world, producing an estimated 50,000 works, including paintings, sculptures, ceramics, drawings and prints. His later years were marked by continued experimentation, often reflecting his personal life, political views and the turbulent events of his time, like the Spanish Civil War and World War II. By the time of his death, technology had advanced significantly, but the world was still far from the digital age that would bring devices like the iPhone into existence. The first iPhone, a groundbreaking device that combined a phone, music player and internet browser into a touchscreen interface, was unveiled by Apple on January 9, 2007 and released for sale on June 29, 2007. This was over 34 years after Picasso's death, meaning he never witnessed the smartphone revolution or the cultural shifts it brought. In 1973, the year Picasso died, technology was in a much earlier stage. Mobile phones were in their infancy, with the first handheld mobile phone call made by Motorola's Martin Cooper on April 3, 1973, just days before Picasso's passing. However, these early devices were bulky, far from the sleek iPhones of the future, and primarily used for voice communication rather than the multifaceted purposes of modern smartphones. Computers were also large, room-sized machines used mostly by institutions, and the personal computer revolution was just beginning to take shape with devices like the Xerox Alto, introduced in 1973 but not widely available. Picasso's era was one of analog creativity, where his tools were paint, canvas and clay, and his innovations were rooted in physical mediums rather than digital ones. While he was deeply interested in modernity, evident in his adoption of new artistic techniques and his engagement with contemporary political and social issues, there's no indication he interacted with the early precursors of modern technology like computers or mobile phones before his death. Had Picasso lived to see the iPhone, his reaction would be a matter of speculation. An artist known for embracing innovation might have been intrigued by the device's potential to create or share art, perhaps experimenting with digital drawing or photography, but his passing in 1973 firmly places him in a pre-digital world, far removed from the technological landscape of 2007.
Hey, you'll never guess what I found out about Christopher Walken the other day. You know how he's got that wild, eccentric vibe in all his movies. Turns out when he was just 15, he actually worked as a lion tamer in a circus. Can you believe that?
No way, really. Christopher Walken, the guy from Pulp Fiction and all those SNL sketches, taming lions at 15, that's insane. How did that even happen?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, so I dug into it a bit. Apparently, back when he was a teenager, this would have been around 1958, since he was born in 1943, he got a summer job with a travelling circus. He didn't run away to join the circus or anything dramatic like that. He just saw the gig advertised and thought, who's going to turn that down? His name back then was actually Ronald Walken, by the way. He didn't start going by Christopher until later, when he was working as a dancer.
Okay, but taming lions at 15 sounds pretty hardcore. Was he, actually in the ring with a bunch of roaring lions, cracking a whip and all that?
Well, not exactly. He downplayed the danger a lot. The circus was owned by a guy named Terrell Jacobs, who was the real lion tamer and had this big act with a dozen lions. Walken was more like a trainee or assistant. As part of the show, they dressed him up in a matching outfit to make it look like he was Jacobs' son, which was a publicity gimmick. After Jacobs finished his main act, he'd send most of the lions out, leaving just one behind for Walken to work with. Her name was Sheba, and Walken always said she was an old lioness, super sweet, and more like a dog than a wild animal.
A dog, really? I mean, it's still a lion. What did he even do with her?
He'd go into the cage, wave a whip around, and get Sheba to do tricks. Stuff like sitting up, rolling over, or giving a little roar for the crowd. He always said it wasn't as dangerous as it sounded because Sheba was so tame. He'd even pet her, and she'd rub her head on his leg like a house cat. Walken's a big cat lover, apparently, which is probably why he took the job in the first place. He saw it in a trade paper, applied because he liked cats, and ended up spending the summer doing this.
That's wild, but I guess it makes sense for someone like him. He's always had that unpredictable energy, you know. Did that circus gig lead him into acting or something?
Not directly, but he did say it was one of the most important experiences of his life. He called himself a jack of all trades in show business back then, since he was already doing little acting gigs and dancing as a kid. His mum was super into the idea of her kids being in entertainment, so he and his brothers were on TV shows and stuff from a young age. The lion taming thing was just one of those random jobs he picked up as a teen. After that summer, he went back to more traditional showbiz, dancing, acting, and eventually changing his name to Christopher when he was performing in a nightclub act in the early 60s.
Huh, that's so cool. I can just imagine a young Christopher Walken with that intense stare of his telling a lion to sit. I wonder if he ever used that in a movie role.
Right, it totally fits his whole vibe. He never played a lion tamer in a movie, which is kind of a shame because that'd be perfect for him. But you can see how that fearlessness might have helped him take on all those crazy roles, like the unhinged Vietnam vet in The Deer Hunter or the creepy brother in Annie Hall. The guy's always been a bit of a wild card. Anyway, the circus gig only lasted that one summer, and then he moved on to dancing and acting full time. Pretty incredible start for a kid from Queens, though.
So I was reading up on Beyoncé the other day, and you know how she's always so larger than life on stage? Turns out she has this alter ego named Sasha Fierce that she created specifically for her performances. Isn't that wild?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about Sasha Fierce before. That's so cool. Beyoncé basically invented a whole other persona to channel when she performs. How did that even come about?
Right? It's such a Beyoncé thing to do. So she first started talking about Sasha Fierce around 2008 when she dropped her album I Am, Sasha Fierce. She said she created this alter ego to help her separate her personal self from her stage self. Offstage, she's Beyoncé Knowles, this shy, more reserved person. Well, as reserved as Queen Bee can be, I guess. But when she steps on stage, she transforms into Sasha Fierce, who's bold, confident, and basically unstoppable. She said it helped her get over her nerves early on in her career, especially when she was transitioning from Destiny's Child to going solo.
That makes so much sense. I mean, her performances are insane. She's got that fierce energy, the choreography, the vocals, everything. So, Sasha Fierce was like her way of turning that on, like flipping a switch?
Exactly! She described Sasha as this fearless part of her that comes out when she performs. Like, Sasha doesn't care what anyone thinks. She's there to slay. Beyoncé even said that when she's Sasha Fierce, she feels like she can do things she'd never do in real life. Like some of those super bold dance moves or wearing those crazy glamorous outfits. I think she also mentioned that Sasha Fierce came out when she recorded Crazy in Love back in 2003, even though she didn't name the persona until later. That song was her first big solo hit, and you can totally feel that fiery energy in it.
I love that. It's like she's got this secret weapon for performing. Did she ever say why she named her Sasha Fierce? That name is so perfect.
Yeah, she did. She said the name Sasha came from a nickname she had as a kid, something her family called her. And Fierce was just because that's the vibe she wanted to embody on stage. Powerful, commanding, and in control. She even gave Sasha a whole backstory, like saying she's too aggressive, too strong, too sassy to be part of her everyday life. Beyoncé wanted to keep that energy on stage only so she could go back to being her regular self. Well, as regular as Beyoncé can be, when she's with her family, like with Jay-Z and the kids.
That's so smart. I mean, being Beyoncé must come with so much pressure. Having Sasha Fierce probably helps her protect her real self a bit. Does she still use the alter ego now, you think? It's 2025. Has she mentioned Sasha lately?
Good question. She actually kind of retired Sasha Fierce a while back. Around 2010, after the I Am, Sasha Fierce tour, Beyoncé said she felt like she didn't need Sasha anymore. She told people she had grown more confident as herself and felt like she could bring that same energy without hiding behind an alter ego. She said she killed Sasha Fierce because she felt like she had fully merged with that side of herself. But honestly, watching her perform now, like at the 2023 Renaissance World Tour, she still has that Sasha Fierce energy, even if she doesn't call it that anymore. It's like Sasha became a part of her for good.
That's so cool to hear. I mean, Beyoncé's always evolving, right? From Destiny's Child to Lemonade to Cowboy Carter, she's a legend. I bet Sasha Fierce is still there in spirit every time she hits the stage.
Totally. Sasha Fierce might not have a name anymore, but you can feel her in every performance. Beyoncé's just on another level, and I think creating that alter ego early on really helped her become the icon she is today. It's like Sasha Fierce was her training wheels for becoming the ultimate performer.
Hey, did you hear about this crazy story I stumbled on about Frank Sinatra? Apparently, back in 1938, he got arrested for seduction and adultery. Can you imagine old Blue Eyes in some old-time scandal like that?
No way, really? Frank Sinatra, the smooth crooner with the fedora and the Rat Pack vibe, arrested for seduction and adultery in 1938? That's wild. What even happened?
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So this was way before he became the huge star we know, back when he was just a young guy trying to break into the music scene, around 23 years old. The whole thing went down in Bergen County, New Jersey, where he was living at the time. Apparently, he had an affair with a woman named Antoinette Della Penta, who was married to someone else. Her husband caught wind of it and pressed charges, claiming Sinatra had seduced her and broken up their marriage. Back then, seduction was this old legal term they used for luring someone into a romantic relationship, especially if it led to trouble like adultery.
Oh man, that sounds like a soap opera. Was it a big deal back then, or did it just blow over?
It was kind of a big deal locally, but it didn't blow up nationally since he wasn't famous yet. The arrest happened in November 1938, and he was hauled into court, but it didn't stick. The charges got dropped pretty quickly, some say because the evidence wasn't solid, or maybe her husband backed off. Sinatra's biographers think it might have been a shakedown too, like the husband was trying to get some cash out of him. Either way, he walked away with a slap on the wrist, and it didn't derail his career. In fact, it's kind of funny. By 1940, he was already starting to sing with the Hoboken Four and getting noticed, so this little scandal didn't hold him back.
That's wild how he dodged that bullet. I bet he learned to keep things low-key after that. Did it ever come up later when he was a big star?
Not really. It stayed pretty buried until people started digging into his early life years later. Once he hit it big with songs like My Way and New York, New York, the focus was more on his music and his Hollywood romances, like with Ava Gardner, than this old arrest. But it's a cool tidbit, right? Shows he had that charm, even as a young guy, getting into trouble with the ladies. Some say it might have even added to his bad boy image later on, though he never talked about it much himself.
Ah, yeah, that totally fits the Sinatra legend. Smooth, but a little rebellious. I can see why he'd want to keep that quiet, though. Thanks for sharing. That's a juicy piece of history for 8:04 p.m. on a Thursday like tonight.
For sure, it's perfect gossip for a May 29, 2025 evening. Makes you wonder what other secrets the Rat Pack had up their sleeves back in the day.
Hey, did you hear about that wild story with Johnny Depp and Hunter S. Thompson? Apparently Depp once spent over $3 million to shoot Thompson's ashes out of a cannon. Can you believe that?
No way, that's insane! Johnny Depp, the Pirates of the Caribbean guy, blasting his friend's ashes into the sky with a cannon? How did that even happen?
Yeah, it's totally bonkers. So, this went down back in 2005 after Hunter S. Thompson, the gonzo journalist who wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, took his own life. They were super close. Depp even played him in that movie. And Thompson had this crazy wish to have his ashes blasted out of a cannon after he died. Depp, being the loyal friend, decided to make it happen. He shelled out something like $3 million, or maybe even $5 million, depending on who you ask, to build this massive setup, including a 153-foot tower shaped like a fist holding a peyote button, which was Thompson's signature symbol. The whole thing was this huge party with fireworks and music, and a ton of celebs like Sean Penn and Jack Nicholson showed up.
Wow, that sounds like something straight out of one of Thompson's wild stories. Why'd he spend so much, though? Was it just for the spectacle?
Pretty much. Depp said he just wanted to honor his friend's last wish and send him off in style. Thompson loved explosions and crazy stunts, so this fit him perfectly. They set it up on Thompson's Colorado property, and Depp even got a custom cannon made to shoot the ashes high into the sky. Some say he wanted the Ark to go higher than the Statue of Liberty, which bumped up the cost. It was this over-the-top tribute, and Depp didn't seem to care about the price tag. He's always been known for splashing cash on wild stuff like yachts and private planes, so this wasn't totally out of character.
That's so Johnny Depp, living large and honouring his friends in the most dramatic way possible. Did it cause any trouble for him later?
Oh yeah, it totally came back to bite him. A few years later, around 2017, his ex-managers sued him, saying his crazy spending, like that $3 million cannon stunt, was why he was in financial trouble. They listed all this stuff, like $75 million on houses and $30,000 a month on wine, and used the Thompson funeral as an example of him throwing money around. Depp fired back, saying it was his money to spend, and even claimed it might have cost $5 million, not $3 million. It's been part of this big legal mess with his managers, but he's never apologised for it. Says it was worth it to give Thompson the send-off he wanted.
Ha! That's classic Depp, defiant to the end. I love how he stuck to his guns, pun intended. It's 8:38 p.m. on a Thursday here in 2025. Perfect time to chat about this crazy story.
Right, it's the kind of tale that makes you grin on a May 29th night. Depp and Thompson were a wild pair, and that cannon blast is probably the most epic goodbye ever.
Hey, did you know Neil Armstrong actually had to fill out a customs declaration form when he got back from the moon?
No way, you're joking. What was he declaring? Moon rocks and space dust?
Exactly that. It sounds insane, but it's true. When Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins landed back on Earth after Apollo 11, they splashed down in the Pacific and then flew to Hawaii. And before officially re-entering the US, they had to go through customs like every other international traveller.
That's hilarious. So they went to the moon, made history, then came back and had to stand in line like they just got back from Cancun.
Pretty much. So, get this, there's an actual customs form from July 24th, 1969. It lists their flight route as starting from Moon and ending in Honolulu, Hawaii. And under cargo, it literally says, moon rock and moon dust samples. Can you believe that?
That's just so bureaucratically beautiful. Like, NASA was pioneering the future and customs was like, yeah, we still need paperwork.
Totally. And the form even has their names typed in. Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin and Michael Collins. It's such a funny mix of legendary and mundane.
Imagine Armstrong filling it out thinking, I just walked on another world and now I'm checking boxes like, nope, didn't come into contact with livestock.
Exactly. It's this perfect little slice of history where space travel and earthbound rules collide.
What? I thought all his money came from Conan and the Terminator. How'd he do it?
Did you know Arnold Schwarzenegger made his first million before he ever became a big movie star?
No way. So like, while he was still that jacked Austrian guy trying to act in a new language, he was out there buying buildings.
Real estate, man. Seriously. Before he was even famous, he was investing in property. Exactly. When he first moved to the United States in the late 60s, he started hustling right away. He and a friend ran a bricklaying business, like literally laying bricks for patios and fireplaces. And he used that money to start buying real estate.
Okay, that's kind of genius. Most people come to Hollywood waiting tables between auditions, and this dude's out there flipping apartments?
Right? He was super smart about it too. He started small, duplexes, fourplexes, then bigger apartment buildings. He paid attention to the market, bought in good areas of LA before they got hot, and held on to properties. By the time he was landing big roles in movies, he was already a millionaire.
So basically, Arnold could have never made it in Hollywood and still been rich.
Yeah. He said in interviews that having that financial freedom is what let him be picky about movie roles. He wasn't desperate for a paycheck, so he could wait for the right roles, like the Terminator, Predator and all those.
That's actually so cool. He didn't just build muscles, he built wealth. Real estate Arnie was doing reps on equity gains while everyone else was broke and auditioning.
Haha, exactly. And he kept doing it too, even when he became a star. His real estate portfolio is massive, like hundreds of millions.
Wow, dude went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Property Empire.
Hey, did you know Greta Thunberg is actually related to Svante Arrhenius, the guy who basically started the whole conversation on climate change over 100 years ago?
Wait, that's Svante Arrhenius? The Nobel Prize winner? The dude who figured out the link between carbon dioxide and global warming in the 1800s?
Yep, that's the one. He's actually her distant relative on her dad's side. Her father is named Svante Thunberg, actually named after Svante Arrhenius, so it runs in the family, both the name and the climate science connection.
Whoa, that's wild. Like, climate change literally runs in her bloodline.
Basically, Arrhenius was this Swedish scientist who, back in 1896, calculated that increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere could warm the Earth. He was one of the first to connect human activity to potential climate effects. People didn't take it super seriously back then, but now his work is considered foundational.
And then, over a century later, here comes Greta, standing in front of world leaders saying, "Listen to the science." That's actually poetic.
Right? She's out there doing speeches at the UN and leading strikes, and her distant ancestor literally invented the science she's fighting to have people listen to.
Kind of amazing, makes her activism feel even more full circle.
Totally. And it's not like she ever leans on that connection publicly. She's made her name completely on her own, but it's just this fascinating historical link.
So she's not only connected to the science, she's connected to the scientist. That's some legacy.
Dude, you're not going to believe this. Bob Ross, the happy little trees guy. He used to be a drill sergeant in the military.
Wait, what? Bob Ross, the soft-spoken guy with the afro who paints mountains and whispers life advice. That Bob Ross.
Yep, before the paintbrush and the squirrels, he was in the Air Force for like 20 years. And he wasn't just some desk guy, he was a master sergeant. Super high ranking.
No way. So he was out there yelling at recruits and making people do push-ups?
Totally. He was stationed in Alaska for most of it, and he had to be that classic strict, loud military guy. Barking orders, enforcing rules, all that.
That is so hard to imagine. The guy literally whispers about clouds and tells you mistakes are just happy little accidents.
I know, but here's the crazy part. He hated being that person. He said in an interview that he promised himself, once he left the military, he'd never raise his voice again.
Damn, that explains everything. His whole vibe is like the anti-military. Calm, peaceful, full Zen mode.
Exactly. And get this, while he was stationed in Alaska, he started taking painting classes in his downtime. That's how he got into it.
No kidding, so he went from shouting at airmen to whispering about happy little trees. That's the ultimate personality plot twist.
Right? And when he retired, he actually used his military savings to learn the wet-on-wet painting technique. That's the style he used on The Joy of Painting. Super quick, great for TV.
Man, that's such a wild arc, from boots and buzz cuts to brushes and blue skies.
Haha, yeah, Bob Ross went full sergeant to sage. It makes you appreciate his calmness even more, like he earned that peace.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed diving into the lesser-known side of these celebrities, but the story doesn't end here. Next up, we're pulling back the curtain on celebrities both past and present. You won't want to miss. Stay tuned.